What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Nooners of Fire and Blood. It's noon somewhere, so don't nag me. How is everyone doing today? I hope everyone is well. If you're watching now, past, present, future, wherever, uh, I'm. I hope you're having a wonderful new year and an awesome time. We're here today to talk about chapters 4 and 5 of Fire and Blood. Talk about Maegor and Aenys and the rise of a young Jaehaerys the first, and everything else in between. I feel like we're gonna have like a 14-hour stream because I didn't realize how much information was in here. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce my co-hosts. As always, ladies first, Sassy Sansa or MackenzieLBurns. How are you today?
Doing very well, Johnny. And this is pretty much two really action-packed chapters with a lot of information that hopefully we can do justice for you all and for ourselves. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Mr. John St. Baptiste, uh, what's up, man?
Not a lot. Doing well today. Thank you for having me on and keeping this train rolling. I'm very excited about it. I mean, this is such a good book, and as Mackenzie was saying, there's so much information in these two chapters.
It really is. I feel this is what we're gonna do. We're not gonna we're gonna get into this, but I'm gonna do character breakdowns too, because I don't know. There's 14 characters in the first 3 chapters that need to be broke down already, and I want to go ahead and say hi to everyone in the chat. Farmall Fanatic, Andy Burnett, uh, Attila Angel, what's up? Bubba Husky, how are you? Eduardo Blanco, how are you doing, my friend? So nice to see you. Kabaka Carlos, what is up, man? Bubba Husky, how are you doing today, my friend? Let's see, who else we got in there? Oh, Pandora Stargarian, how are you doing? All right. Juan Super Mario Macias. I hope I said that right. Oh, that's a tongue twister. I hope everyone's having a fantastic day. Let's get right into this.
I did see a Lauren's Corner. I don't know if she's still here.
Oh, Lauren. Voodoo. Okay. Either way, it doesn't matter. She'll pop up or not. So, we'll get into Aenys and Maegor for a second, but Aegon lives a little bit. He passes off his rule basically to Aenys, but before this, he goes to a celebration party to Dorne. This kind of adds to my suspicion that they possibly have a royal hostage or a ward, so to speak, and Aegon is going to check to make sure that everything that was promised in the letter is being held up. That's what I feel like this is, because it makes no sense really for him to go celebrate this peace treaty with Dorne, especially given the circumstances of the letter, how he reacted. Uh, he gripped it so damn, thrown so damn hard, he cut himself. What were your thoughts on that? And we'll start with Mackenzie.
About which part, like the beginning of the chapter, or when
No, just specifically right now about the celebration of the treaty between Dorne and the Crown.
That's kind of most definitely more suspicious due to the fact that it's written that it's about 10 years after Rhaenys goes missing and stuff. So it's kind of like suspicious in terms of timing as well as like why, because the book points out that Aegon was never able to bring Dorne into the fold, and it's probably like circumstances because of that event, pre-10th, and then right when the 10-year, I guess, anniversary shows up, which kind of gives credence to potentially a royal hostage, potentially something else, and who knows? George needs to even go into that part. Like, he's given us so much already, but now he just needs to go into that part as well. Maybe if we get a Dorne-ish type book.
Yeah.
Or like even a couple of short stories about Dorne. Like, now just even more.
Even after Aegon agreed to peace, he found out immediately after that Dorne was in no shape to defend itself. So they had to have something on Aegon. What do you think, John? And I want to say a big shout out to Chrissy of Oldstones, Forrest Blurta, and who else popped in? I think that's all that popped in. Help me out if Geordie Jedi. Don't let me forget anyone. All right, go ahead, John.
Oh, I was just gonna say, you know, I have my own pet theory about what was in the letter. But rereading this a second time, I can, at least to an extent, get behind yours that there's a royal hostage down there. You know, I can see the reasoning behind it, and it's pretty sound reasoning. In fact, you're almost like winning me over to your side on this theory. I'm not positive about that, but you know, you're pulling me in that direction. You're pulling me over to the dark side. But I yeah, it I mean, there has to be some reason because you know that Aegon, he had no fracking desire to go to Dorne. He didn't want to go see these people. I mean, you know, they've been a thorn in his side for the past 17 years, right? 17?
Tortured his friends, killed his sister,
Yeah.
and sister wife.
I mean, granted, that's the wilds. That's not everyone in Dorne, but still, one has those mental associations. Um, you know, so yeah, yeah, maybe there is a royal hostage, you know, and I like Mackenzie's optimism that there might be some Dornish short stories or a Dornish book, but I really don't see it. I would be the first person to pick up and buy one, but I don't see it happening.
No, I know. I'm just being like throwing it out there because not many people like because people want obviously Fire and Blood Part 2. They want Winds of Winter. They want now even like a Stark book that's like Fire and Blood, but that would take forever, even longer. But even if we just get like what happened during that one event, that would just probably help us a lot along with that whole thing. So, yeah, Johnny.
Yeah, I turned up John a little bit, but we'll see what happens. He's a whisperer. It's okay. No. Yeah, I really feel like there's something to that, and maybe in the reread we'll see some more evidence of that and a possible character that pops up. Who the hell knows? At this point, when I reread this, I've seen so many things that it's kind of messed with my head. But yeah, as Aegon's last 7 years were interesting. He didn't do much, and he gave the progressions over to Aenys and Alyssa. You know, and well, he died very sadly. Well, not have a stroke, which is a super scary thing, but Aegon the Uncrowned was there, and Viserys the First was there, right? Am I correct? And he was at the painted table at Dragonstone, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so.
And Maegor oversaw the eulogy as well, and I'm just kind of go ahead.
Where's that sound coming from?
What are you talking about?
Where's that sound coming from?
What sound?
I'm hearing like. Do you hear all this?
No, I heard none of it.
Here,
Sounded good on my end.
I'm gonna cut out and come back in.
Okay. Yeah. So Maegor oversaw the eulogy. Maegor lit him a flame, and that's kind of the last we see of Aegon. We can talk about him a little bit more later in a character breakdown, but let's get into the real differences between Aenys and Maegor straight from birth. Aenys, uh, who is older, was half the size of Maegor. Very sickly, screaming baby that only began to flourish once Quicksilver, the hatchling Quicksilver, was given to him, which I think is interesting. But he was always a shy, passive person, whereas Maegor had a sword in his hand at 3, was killing cats, animals, had these serial killer traits. Those are still considered rumors, but I believe it after you see the reign of King Angus of Maegor. He the horse, I think a horse kicked him or bit him, and he
Yeah,
slayed the horse.
Yeah, it was like
And
horse bit him. Yeah.
And he just slayed the horse, and then he slashed the face of the stable boy.
Hey,
Maegor don't give a shit, and if there couldn't be two opposite brothers. This is the epitome of a yin and yang type of short story we have here. With Maegor is like a super amplified Visenya, and in my opinion, and Aenys is like a super amplified Rhaenys. Sorry. um, John, what are your thoughts on the differences between Aenys and Maegor?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot. By the way, sorry for cutting out like that.
Now, just
The
go ahead and push
sound
through, bro.
from another video of mine started just playing in my ears. I'm not sure what was going on.
Oh, that's
there. It was
cool.
really
Just keep pushing
weird.
through.
But yeah, Aenys and Maegor are. I agree with you to the extent that yes, the one is definitely Rhaenys' son, and the other's Visenya's son. By the way, is my sound better? Okay. Um, I think even more so that, or not even more so, but also they're the two sides of Aegon. You know, the one is the diplomat, the one who's loved by the people. The one's the Velvet Glove, and the other's the Iron Fist. But neither of them are capable of being both, and that's what it takes to rule an entire kingdom like this. And you know, they both make their own poor decisions. I think Aenys makes more. You know, and Aenys is a little emo. He's I don't understand why nobody likes me, and you know he's kind of wishy washy about his decisions and whereas Maegor just goes ahead and does what he thinks needs to be done and almost without thinking about it, which has its own liabilities. Um, I but yeah, I definitely think that Maegor is very much Visenya's son, and Aenys is very much Rhaenys' son. And also, there's that theory out there that neither of them are Aegon's sons.
Very true, very true. We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. Yeah, that's. I think one of them is, but we'll see. Uh, is there any? Did you see anything in the chat? I had to step away real quick.
Yeah. Bubba thought that because Aenys was sickly, that he could be a possible green theory.
Okay, maybe. If so, he never used it. I think it might have been more of a bond with his dragon, even though he never really rode Quicksilver many places. He was just very shy, very passive, didn't know what to do, couldn't make a decision, and that really sums him up to a T. But man, did he have some awesome children? Am I right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah, and I definitely say passive over shy. He wasn't shy. I mean, it says that he got along with people. He made friends easily. Everybody liked him. So I wouldn't say he was shy, but
well,
definitely passive
Or maybe
and indecisive.
go ahead, Zaza.
yeah, like it's a potential. Like, well, obviously, when you have the comparison between him and Maegor, oh sorry, when you have the comparison between him and Maegor, it's one of those things where it's just one's gonna obviously look more shy and more like timid, even though they have other abilities. They may be more shy, and Andy Burnett makes the comment of if the two of them, if the two brothers had worked together, they would have been a good team.
And well, Aenys tried to that point. He really did try. And to Bubba's point earlier about the greens here, I think Aenys was more. I feel like a skin change. The difference between us, I don't know. I feel like it was the bond with the dragon because Rihanna had the same type bond with Dreamfire that Aenys did. She had this instant bond, and if I'm not mistaken, was it Rihanna that stuck the eggs in Aenys and Jaehaerys' cradle? Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but just to that point, yeah, there's something there. We're gonna get deeper into that. Like later, we're gonna talk about how Maegor's seed is described as having worms in it, and I know it's used as a metaphor, but I think it's a possible hint in the writing to the things that were found in Arya Targaryen later, who's more than likely Rhaella. But we'll get into that in a few. Uh, to the point, Aenys tried to help let Maegor. He gave Maegor was Hand of the King, right? Correct. And he gave him Blackfire, so Maegor had Dark Sister and Blackfire, and so I don't know. He put too much trust in his brother and everyone around him. To your point, John, he just couldn't see why people wouldn't like him. Didn't understand. He was socially inept, would be a good word for it. And yeah, yeah, Kinsey or John, you got any more thoughts on kind of their first reign? Then we'll get into the politics that they had going on in between each other.
Yeah, it's well because of the fact that they are sort of separated in terms of like age and not only like the aptitudes. It's also the thing too that Aenys preferred not a milkmaid, but he preferred his mother, which is unlike I guess most royal children. They always have a designated thing, so maybe that was that connection. But maybe he also this could I guess point to like the green seer type of a thing that the whole thing with his mother being the one that passes away when he's 3 years old, that he wanted more of that connection to her before obviously he wouldn't really be able to remember her because it's hard to really establish memories until they're about 5 years old. So to have some sort of a connection to her is a thing, because she did obviously die, Dorne. Um, while Maegor gets to have his mother pretty much his entire life. So it's like that contrast of the quote unquote more evil one had his his mother in his ear, while the one who had to essentially have no mother, yeah, is the one
Yeah.
that's more soft.
That's a good point. He lost his mother earlier. I think he was scarred by that, and if he did go with Aegon and it was a funeral, that would have definitely affected him. And it kind of mirrors Aegon the Third, right? The way he was so somber after seeing the death of was it his mother? If I'm not mistaken, that was eaten in front or burned alive in front of him. I think it was his mother. Uh, get into that later. So many names. I don't want to get off topic because I'll lose myself. But the Second Dornish War, if you could call it that, we have the Vulture King, and Aenys keeps making these horrible decisions, these dumb decisions that keep causing uprisings. You have after he announces the engagement of, is it, oh my God, who is it, Rhaena and Aegon, right? After he announces that, you have, who is it, the poor fellows and oh my God, what are they called?
Silver Stars.
Silver Stars?
Isn't it Silver Stars?
Warrior Sons, and I think the Silver Stars are in there as well. You have all these
I
uprisings.
just remember Silver Star because I love Moesha and Dawn.
You have Hair in the Red, and he sends. We can. I don't know. Let's talk about the Second Dornish War and Orys Baratheon, and him getting his vengeance before his death, and I think it's pretty poetic. And I don't know. Would you like to touch on that, Mackenzie, a little bit?
Yeah, because that whole the war is something that we obviously get some information about, but it's something that we obviously have to deal with because at this time still, Aenys is a relative, even though he's 30 something when Aegon the Conqueror is killed. He's still a relatively young in terms of, I guess, knowing how to rule king. So having to deal with
35.
Yeah. So having to deal with, even though he's a full-fledged adult at this point, having to deal with a war is kind of thing that you have to, in a sense, worry about, especially when it's with Dorne and the reputation that especially happens with his mother and Dorne and all of that. So it's a multitude of things that probably for him maybe slightly more traumatizing to deal with rather than say if Maegor was king at that time anyways. So
That's a good point. I'll take care to our Angel. Thank you for stopping by. Yeah, that just makes me want to talk about all his mistakes. First off, he wouldn't mount his dragon because he didn't want his queen to be riding a horse by herself. He wouldn't take Harrenhal on his dragon. He waited for 1,000 men to get there. By the time he got there, Harry in the Red had done Quentin Harris's son. What was it, Gorgon? I think's his name. Harry in the Red just cut off his genitals and fed him to a dog, and then just made Aenys look like an ass. Just left before they got there. The Vulture King is just tearing everyone up. The and then so who is it? Goran Greyjoy. He takes out the new Lodos, right? And then Aenys offers him anything he wants. And this is another thing against the faith, right? Here he has all the Septons kicked out of the damn Iron Islands. So you have all this revolt that he's stirring up on top of him looking weak and making weak decisions, and everyone can see it. I mean, everyone around him was taking advantage of him. John?
Well, I'd say even I would say what affected Aenys's rule even more than making weak decisions is all the decisions he just didn't make. Like he just wouldn't make a decision. He'd be like, "Oh, okay, so we're going to assemble the fleet, and then I'm just going to let him sit there." And so it came to the Royces to take care of the rebellion that was going on in the area. And then, with the Dornish and with Red Herring, like he would be like, "Okay, we're gonna you don't do that publicly. Like you figure this out ahead of time, You do all this internal arguing or discussing with your counsel or whatever ahead of time, and then you act. You know, a bad plan. There was a general who said this, and I can't remember who it was. But a bad plan can be made to work if it's made decisively. A
It
good
can at
plan
least be
cannot be
believed in.
right. A good plan cannot be made to work if there's indecision. And that's not the direct quote. And for the life of me, I can't remember what general it was who said that. But you know, there's a lot of truth to that. That you know, and that's why he came across as weak.
Visenya gave him great counsel twice. You know, she told him what he needed to do. He needed to bring fire and blood. At some point, he did. By the point she offered him this advice, he had needed to do it already. He refused to do it at Harrenhal, and then after he announced the wedding or the oh my gosh, I can't think of the damn name of what you would call it. The intent to wed Aegon and Rhaena.
Betrothing.
The betrothal. Freaking slipping my mind. Apologies. But that instantly pissed the Faith off. They had accepted Aegon and his sister wives, but that was it. They tolerated it. And against all advice, he put them together. And Visenya agreed kind of with the fact that, you know, they should keep it in the family, but if they were going to, that he needed to take Quicksilver to Old Town, and he needed to do something about it. Visenya will later do this.
Well, what I would have done is, I mean, in Aenys' case, is have talked to Aunt Visenya about poisoning the overly zealotrous Septon, getting rid of him, getting somebody a little more accommodatable in the position, and then discuss it. But that's just how I'd handle things.
Well, yeah.
Like my point being, like if you have this religious zealot who obviously has so many issues with.
I mean, he has issues with brothers and sisters marrying. I don't know if that's like calling someone a religious zealot. Septon Moon was a crazy mother.
Well, no, I mean, it even says in the book that he'd give these like day-long sermons and, you know, this fire and brimstone and all this stuff. This is like asking Jerry Falwell to.
Well, that was when Maegor was on the way, I believe, when he gave those long sermons. I'm not.
I think it was the same Septon. I think it was the same Septon. I'll have to look back. I'm pretty sure it was though. But no, all I'm saying is like
Donnell the Delayer.
Make a better political climate before you do something that's politically controversial.
Well, it just had no. I mean, I don't even think he would be good at checkers. Chess his head would explode, or Savas. You know. Any thoughts, Kinsey? I know. Well, you know, Savage Sam Tarly took the Vulture King captive. That's something that happened. He was tied naked and died of thirst. I don't know how long. Probably only a few days it takes. You know, and Oris got his. The person who took his hand was Will, the widow lover, if I'm not mistaken. And his son Walter Will, Oris Baratheon, took a hand and took the other 3 limbs as what do you call it?
Usury.
I can't remember. A usury. Yeah. Like, so basically that was a debt. You know, it was an interest rate. And his son Davos said that he strung them up like onions in his tent on the way back. Now, Oris Baratheon died of his wounds later, but I say he went out on his shield pretty good. How's it going, Septus Shyness Secrets? What is going on, everyone?
I have to point out, she's got the quote right here. It was patent.
Yeah.
Good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Andy
Thank
Burnett
you,
makes
Septa.
because I asked the chat like what their thoughts about Maegor were. Majority Jedi said that he was just cruel. But Andy Burnett brings up a good point too that says I think that he was an angry youth that was not counseled properly, and when he took over, no one came to him to like aid. So he had like no aid. So that's why he only responded with the way he know how, which is to be like violent and um, such a crazy, cruel person who wasn't like obviously taught properly or wasn't like watched by like maesters or
He was by Visenia's side the whole time. She put a sword in his hand at 3. The man was killing cats, horses, dogs, whatever he could get his hands on at an early age. Classic signs of a a Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy type for damn sure. That's a good point, but he goes a little overboard. I think Secrets of the Citadel did a video on whether Maegor and Aenys or even Aegon's son, and she talked about Maegor, and makes a good point that once Rhaenys died, everyone wanted Aegon to take another wife because Visenya hadn't had a child yet. But all of a sudden, Visenya said, "Wait, I'm with child." Uh, Gemma thinks it's possible that since Visenya delved in dark magic, that she possibly could have used a spell to conceive Maegor, and this would account for why he can't reproduce. This would account for his superhuman, seemingly abilities uh,
yeah.
in battle. So, yeah, so I don't know. It's an interesting thought. Y'all go ahead
Well,
and chime in whenever you want.
thing kind of I know this is crossing into a different thing, but using magic um, is most definitely like John won't really get this one as much, but it's like the whole thing with like Vikings and how do you like uh, Aslaugs used a lot of magic and prophetic things to make herself have children, especially when she conceived Ivar. So it's like that whole thing and how, well, you know, Johnny, how Ivar is kind of a little bit towing the lines of Maegor a little bit. But yeah, it's just that whole thing of he's a crazy person. And Pandora Targaryen said if Maegor was raised to rule as his brother was, he may have turned out differently, but he wasn't. He was the spare to the heir, but was never treated like it. So he grew up as like more of like the warrior, like, and then I would just add like a more like the psychotic part of it because
His
like
childhood sounds exactly like The Mountain That Rides to me. I, I see your points there. If he wasn't killing people before he was 10 years old, I would see. Even then, you say, "Oh, Arya's killed people before," but this is different. He like killed people because he just got a little pissy. He throws tantrums and kills things. I don't think
Can I,
it's just that. Go ahead, John. That's
I
a
was
good
just going to
point.
ask if I could drop my pet theory now.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, we know that the characters in this, George Martin does this whole reflections and repetitiveness of characters and behavior and things like that. My little pet theory is that Visenya and Maegor are a previous reflection of Tywin and what Joffrey would have become if he had become an adult and learned how to fight. But I just see some real correlations there. Um, I know you think Visenya is more reminiscent of Cersei, but I don't think she's as crazy or as stupid or as power grasping just for power's sake. Um, and she wants to preserve that line.
I compare her in the the thought that she is so blinded by the love for her child that she'll do anything to put Maegor on the throne. Just like Cersei knows that Joffrey was evil, but still was helpless with the love of a parent for a child. I think it's almost that simple as far as that goes. It's I don't know. It's painful for Visenya. You can tell it worked on her. It worked on her mind. And in the end days, she became darker. She became a lot darker. She recluse. Some say she delved in the dark arts, which, why not? She probably did. I mean, knowing what we've seen throughout all these books and shows. Also, uh, do you think Visenya killed Aenys? You think she poisoned Aenys?
I
On
don't
that
think there's a
note,
question about it. I've never had a question about that since I read that she went there because that also reflects when Pycelle took over the care of Jon Arryn. He got better and then he died. So I think that's a little Easter egg that Germ is dropping, because that's exactly what happened with Aenys when Visenya took over the care of Aenys. Was that he got better and then he died. And then what does she do? She hops on her dragon, goes across the sea, says, "Hey, Maegor, exile's over. Get the hell over here, and say you're going to be king."
yeah, he was 35 when he died, and he looked 60 by all accounts. By the time he had died, he was nothing but bones, and I can't remember what it was described. It's described pretty grossly in here. But he was retreated to Dragonstone at that point for sure. Go ahead, Kenzie. Sorry.
That he was went to bed with stomach aches and I guess I would assume essentially diarrhea almost. It's wasn't, and it's that thing of poison, because we know poison is a thing that comes up a couple times. A lot of people think that Tywin was even slowly poisoned before Tyrion shot him with a bow and arrow because of how the way his body smelt. So it's kind of that, and a lot of people are bringing up the fact of psychopath or sociopathic tendencies and how it's on the child, but it's also on the parent as well.
True. It's still a mental disorder that would still need tending to. That would take more than parenting to fix. And that's a good point, Pandora Targaryen. I would say he's more on a psychopath level than a sociopath. But they probably has both disorders. Sociopath is basically you never can hear the word no. Nothing will stop you from attaining. You will kill and you will do anything possible to attain your goal. Nothing can ever stop you. And then to top it off, if you they'll relish in murdering people, which Maegor clearly liked it. He enjoyed it, and that's what's really disturbing about it. I mean, what he did to his own his nephew or brother? Nephew, right? Viserys was just I mean, he watched while is it a oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, what's her name? Lion of the Tower?
Yeah.
All these fucking names, man. Sorry for the F-bombs.
15 different names in this one chapter.
Tiana of the Tower. My goodness gracious, man. Just watched him torture her for a couple weeks till she died. Till he died. So he enjoys this, but yeah, they say, that's a good point, Andy Burnett. He brings up, I was going to definitely segue into this. During the trial of the Seven, he was virtually in a coma or laying about to die for 27 days. Then on the 28th day, Leanne of the Tower shows up, and then he magically just pops up, takes off right on Maegor. I think he burns 700 poor fellows. Doesn't burn all of them. You know, the archers and stuff get them as well. But it's that's insane. I want to see what happened in that damn room. You think it was like the Jon Snow ceremony? And there's some. Let me throw some good comments from chat out here. And I'll say, "What's up, Bobby Catalano and Chrissy of Old Stones?" Let's see.
Clarissa
Andy
is also
Burnett. Huh.
Clarissa is also here.
Oh, and Clarissa Thompson. All these Jills in the chat. Maester saying they have a bad belly equals poison or magic, but the Maesters never want to admit to any magic. That's very true, and this was all written by Maester. So a lot of the stuff we're talking about is hearsay, so to speak.
Gray rats. Use the proper term. It's gray rats.
And Septa showing a secret makes a good point. Germ definitely seems to twist the sins of the father with the father's genetics. He had daddy issues for sure. Oh, that's for damn sure. He did keep getting passed over, and that's another thing that's, you know, when the marriage was announced, not only betrothed Aegon and Rhaena, took a Dragonstone from Maegor at the same time and gave it to Aegon. I mean, and he's just like slapping him in the face and saying, "Why don't you like me? Why don't you like me? Why don't you like me?" And yeah, he was already a bad man with bad tendencies, and it's like a mouse just trying to beat up, like, just trying to, I don't know, a mouse and a lion trying to get along. I don't know. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm still sick. Don't judge me. Anyone chime in when you want, or I'll just keep rambling about nothing. But, oh, yeah, gonna let me keep rambling about nothing?
No.
What's up, Al Red Sox fan? How's it going, buddy? Go ahead whenever you want. I mean, okay, so I'm gonna keep going. So he claimed the Black Dread himself. He never claimed a rider. He got mocked openly by Rhaena for not having a dragon yet. You know, Rhaena got Dreamfire, instantly bonded with Dreamfire. She flew Dreamfire everywhere. Beautiful. I think it was a silvery blue dragon, if I'm not mistaken. Or bluish, like I like bluish. And you know, Maegor claimed Balerion. You know, that's almost still, you know, that lends even more credence to me that he does have something in his blood, that there is something there. There's definitely special about him. I mean, he just basically walked up to Balerion and rode him. But as we find out, Arya Targaryen did the same later. So, I don't know, maybe Balerion's just a nice guy. I'm joking.
Yeah, a name like that. It could be just the fact, maybe because of the ancestry and like, because I guess maybe because sometimes they also say that dragons also pick their riders as well. So probably Balerion was like, and I don't want like a wuss to be my rider, almost like kind of a thing, and that they wanted like someone more like stronger at least. And well, obviously, Aenys and the others have had dragons that befit them better. So it's obvious that even though Aegon wasn't like a tyrant as much as his son, his presumed son, Maegor, it was just that thing of that, and it just the fact that he also has Balerion makes him even more of a, what is it? Not a psychopath, but it's more of just like that whole like adding more fear to when
It's gonna inflate his ego as well. Plus, he has both Valyrian sword. I mean, come on.
Dark Sister, and all of that. Like, yeah, although he never carried Dark Sister, it was always just in his room, in his chambers. So it was just that he had one to carry scare people with, and then I just had one hiding. Yeah, we can also talk about the wives kind of after. They're kind of because they're kind of interwound, especially with Maegor.
Yeah, I mean, it's was it? Oh my gosh, who was his first wife? Cerise Hightower, and then Alice Holloway, right? And she was the king's whore, or Maegor's whore, if I believe. Now this is a good segue because this is after. This is what really puts the rift between Maegor and Aenys. They already had a rift, but Maegor still seemingly tolerated his brother somewhat. You could argue loved him at this point, but Aenys chooses to exile him over this. Uh, and just really quick before we get into the wives, what do you think about that, John?
I think it goes back to like so this is Annie's realizing that maybe being indecisive is not good. Annie's problem is he was always indecisive, and when he wasn't indecisive, he didn't think out what he did before he did it. Like he didn't think about the consequences beyond his actions. Like you said, it you know he couldn't play Savas. He couldn't play chess. You know, he didn't think about the consequences of his act. He couldn't think 2 moves ahead, let alone 10. And you know, when it comes to you know, like this, like the whole thing with the first time he gets stubborn is with, you know, this zealotrous septon about his kids marrying each other. Like that's when he's like, no, it's gonna be my way, you know. But then he doesn't back it up. You know, we've had this conversation before about other characters. He writes checks with his mouth that he can't cash with his ass. You know, and that's the only time that he acts decisive. Otherwise, he's indecisive. And you know, with the thing with Maegor, like exiling him, that situation could have been handled in so many better ways than just like, oh hey, okay, well you're not going to do what I say, so get out. Like,
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
no. I mean, that's pretty much what I have to say
Yeah,
about that. He was just terribly indecisive. I mean, his name should have been, you know, Aenys the Ineffective.
yeah, that's a good name. Yeah, Maegor was a badass. He was a unhorsed 3 Kings Guard at attorney before he was unseated at 16 years old and was dubbed Knight with Blackfire by Aegon himself. Uh, I think, let me look at my room. I mean, King Sargasso San, the Lysini pirate he rooted out. So I wonder if he was related to Salador San. I think that's pretty funny. Uh, he defeated the Trident. He did all of these things before he was a dragon rider. I don't think he claimed Balerion until he was 20 or so, if I'm not mistaken. It just shows that having a dragon isn't everything. That's something I think that's exemplified here. And now that we've pretty much stated that everybody's in agreement, Aenys was probably poisoned by Visenya, right? Well, let's get into Maegor and his wives. And Kenzie, would you like to start us off? We could.
Maegor
Yeah,
the
just
first
go ahead.
I am. Maegor the first I am.
Because he was supposed to be originally married to Aenys' eldest daughter because of the Targaryen tradition. But I guess of the whole protectiveness of the father thing while she was still so young, was like, no, not now at least. And she had her with
I believe it was
Aegon.
to mainly appease the faith or the Septons in Old Town.
So then instead, as almost like a consolation, he marries. Or he's betrothed to Cerise Hightower, whom they got married, and it's presumed after the bedding ceremony pretty much that he thought that he had gotten her pregnant because they had done the deed as it's written multiple times, I believe. So it's like that whole thing of he just believed instantly that he would have an heir. But it took them never to have a child, which then obviously caused him to marry more and more people. But I don't know,
So I think it was after, right? Yeah, and I'll let you keep going. I was just gonna say, I think it was right after Aenys had given birth. I mean, not Aenys. After Alyssa had given birth to, I believe, their sixth child, and Maegor still hadn't even gotten his wife pregnant, he decided to take on Alice. Oh my God. Yeah, Alice Haraway. And yeah, to your point, Cerise didn't even make it through childbirth.
no, they
Giving
had no
birth.
children. That was barren, so you had to Haraway because they had no children for while his brother had six and his wife survived. Yeah, he married them on Dragons. He was married on Dragonstone with Visenya still there. So it's usually the female. It's usually the male tyrants that usually have multiple wives, like King Henry VIII. He had multiple wives because he had no children or no male heirs, while he had a lot of daughters. And even though Maegor never gets the male heir, Henry VIII does, but then the child doesn't survive much longer after. So it's that thing of almost being cursed, either with daughters or with, like, I guess in that mindset, almost it's like no children, which kind of like ails him a little bit.
Cursed is a good point. Was he cursed from the beginning from some spell? It kind of brings us back around that Visenya desperately wanting to get pregnant and not being able to. And I believe if out of the two sisters, Rhaenys and Visenya would be the faithful one. She was all about duty. She was all about honor, whereas Rhaenys was more playful. Not saying Rhaenys cheated on Aegon. I'm just saying if I had to choose. Yeah, that's a good point, John.
I definitely think there was a curse. Whether it happened by the way he was born, or whether it happened because he was. I don't. Was this before or after he killed his nephew?
So,
But there's also the question: did he abet in some way of killing Aenys? You
hmm,
know, because it also Visenya ends her life like uh oh, I'm trying to find the page. It's like she's basically the flesh sloughs off her skin. Um, the way she does. I mean, there's this repeating motif that kinslayers are going to be cursed. And it kind of makes me wonder if But then again, there's the fact that he never had a child before that. So yeah, maybe it was a curse from his birth, just by the nature of his birth. But like the really weird shit, like worm babies, beneath the skin, doesn't happen until after that. And I know you have I know you have a very different theory about this. It was just a thought of mine that, and I actually adhere to yours a little more. These were just things that I wanted to point out. But please, I like your theory a lot. Please elaborate on it.
Well, I feel like there has to be some ancient Valyrian ritual that is used to make a dragon spawn or a dragon seed. Some way that you can, at a cost, make sure that you have a baby through some type of blood magic. And I wouldn't put it past Visenya and her desperation to give Aegon a child to do that. And it still could mean that Maegor is Aegon's, just that she, and we talk about this later, did a fertility spell of some sorts. I know that Maegor's seed is described as having worms in it, and it's colorful language used to describe how evil Maegor is, but I think it may tie into what was in Arya Targaryen later. I don't know if I can put it all together now, but I feel like the blood of the dragon does have a symbiotic parasite in it. And that's what is so special about the blood of the dragon, because in Old Valyria, so important to keep the bloodlines pure. If you didn't, then I think when it seems like when Targaryens wed other people, they have worse babies, or at least it's still a flip of the coin. It doesn't seem to make a difference whether they sleep with a normal person or another Targaryen as far as whether the babies come out deformed. It just, I don't know. It seems there's a compatibility issue, and if the blood isn't right, then it just won't work. But I'm still trying to formulate my thoughts on that and fine tune that.
Yeah, because you don't hear about anybody else making monster babies.
Not really. I mean, people have birth defects, but
shadow babies.
holes in the heart, scales on the body, no eyes, wings, twisted arms and legs. It's a little different than the normal birth defects from what you would think. Kenzie?
Yeah, most definitely. It becomes from the years and years of incest and stuff that's a problem. But I guess when it's almost gets to the point of going too far, it just doesn't work. Maybe that's why with like Maegor is just that essentially part of that line almost needed to end maybe with him, because who knows what a child of his could have been like. We also don't know how the type of father that he could have been. Maybe like I know your banner there says that he would have been a good father, Don, but it's almost that thing of like how, as a father, would he have really been? Would he have done the same things? Would he have, as when the child is born, given him like a sword to have like in his cradle beside him? Like would have been like those weird things that like he would have done as a father. But obviously it's kind of relatively the same amount of DNA with Aerys and all of his children, but still, like, it's hard to tell, like, what, because of DNA, what it could have looked like for Maegor and any of his children, even though it's like try, fail, or like fail and stuff. And even though some of the wives were able to conceive, just wasn't, obviously it would always just stop about 6 months beforehand, and then it was like a stillbirth.
Right, and then you have okay, so we'll talk about the Trial of the Seven, which was really cool. Only for the fact that you had who was it? Dick Bean was the only one to speak up for Maegor and want to fight for Maegor to begin with. And who was it? Sir Bernard Broom spoke up and said, uh, basically called everyone cravens. Dick Bean makes us all look like idiots. Somebody stand up and fight for Maegor. I thought that was hilarious. Maegor ends up winning, and if I'm not mistaken, oh yeah, he fights Sir Damon Morgan from the Warrior Sons, and he beats two, uh, 2-on-1 at the end, but he has a wound to his helm, and he's basically in and out of consciousness, halfway dead, and that way for, like we said, 27 days. Then Tiana of the Tower comes. Now, when you talk about whether Maegor was cursed or not, Tiana said she gave all his wives, she made them infertile or messed up the pregnancies. But this doesn't gel with me. I think she said that out of spite. I know she probably knows some dark sorcery, but Maegor was trying to have children way before she got there. Right? John? Anybody?
Yeah, I think he was. Another thing that this conversation's kind of brought me back to, more with Visenya, is how into Lovecraft GRM is, and there's all this like spawning with demons and things like that, and not even necessarily with Visenya, but definitely with the Valerians. Like, it's given me some food for thought because there are all these instances of Targaryens, which are the only Valerians we really know, having these deformed babies that have wings and things like this. And if you get into a lot of Lovecraft's mythos, there's a whole lot of that interbreeding with others that has caused that, because if I recall correctly, initially dragons didn't have wings. They were just fireworms.
Oh,
I'm
no,
gonna
no,
go
no,
down
no.
a freaking rabbit hole that's gonna like take me to
I don't know
crazy
about that.
levels here thinking about that.
Dragons run wild way before Valyria. I know that much. And then fireworms look like dragons. They got a dragon's head and a snake's body, basically. And then you have a wyvern, which is a dragon with no wings. Uh, Origin of dragons. That's something to get into right there. Good God, that'd take us a whole damn.
No, like I said, we're talking a huge rabbit hole that I'm gonna need to sit down and write about the because and do a little more research. But no, it was just a thought I had. Like, was there in ancient history some sort of pact, bond, whatever that was made to make Valerians, specifically Targaryens, able to ride and control and bond with dragons?
Hmm. Yeah,
Okay, I'm gonna go crazy with this.
yeah, there has to be something, but we'll get into that later because I think it calls for when we get later into the book. That discussion gets really, really good. Oh my gosh, we're still like barely into the first chapter, the chapter 4. Let me see if I can move us along a little bit. We might have to do 2 parts to this. Let's see. Okay, so Tiana of the Tower, and what do you think she had any? I can't. Did Visenya die before Tiana got there? Tiana got there? No, right? I feel like she had something to do with Visenya's death.
No, he put his other wife aside.
Okay,
And
I
then
just
Visenya was there for a while after that.
so, got you. If I'm Alice Holloway returned with Tiana from Pentos, right? And yeah, she was rumored in all these dark arts. She's done all these crazy things. She was into torture. Um, I don't know. Your thoughts on Diana of the Tower? Do you have any compelling things to add about her character that you noticed? Oh, yeah. Go ahead, John. I just want to say hey to Cardinal Doomsday. How you doing, my friend? And
Oh
yeah,
no, I was pointing at Kenzie. I was gonna let Kenzie go first. I went first last time.
Sorry, just pulling up the thing. Yeah, like the fact that when I know you probably said this already, but the fact that when she shows up, she kind of comes at a more of a suspicious, not suspicious, but like a relatively like suspicious time, and it's kind of calls to question like if she was able to influence some sort of thing that happened. Um, I don't know, like the element of having her in the story almost is like gives us like another perspective on like what is going on at this time. Um, there's the potential that it's kind of like a not a red priestess as a full thing, but it's just like that whole element of like that type of magic or connection to like a magic that's not like the Targaryens, where their magic is more specifically related to their family and the dragons almost. Because she comes into the story, right? Like when Maegor is like seen to be healthy again after his accident. So it's kind of just like, like that. Yeah, and it comes credence, like you said, John. It's almost like the John resurrection scene that we see in season 6. We may get like we may not get the actual resurrection scene in the books like it's portrayed in the show. It may be like a thing of like it happens like off screen in the book, but then it comes out like that way, and it's presented to someone outside of the room like it's presented with Maegor, which would be kind of a fun thing to go through.
point, John.
Only other thing I wanted to point out is we do have to keep in perspective that Maester Gildan wrote this, and he's very anti-Maegor and very pro-Jaehaerys. And so I do think that we have to take that's one of the great things about the way Jerem writes is that everything is from a certain character's perspective. So it's an unreliable narrator. And you have to wonder how played up all of this hate of Maegor is. I mean, facts are facts, and what he did, and what happened, happened. But all these other, it may have been, there's a certain, to a certain level, I'm a bit skeptical about how horrible he may have been and how horrible she may have been.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I do think that this is written from a very biased point of view. I mean, this is written by.
This particular chapter is not as much of a compilation as other chapters. Yeah, this is more of a chapter from one source rather than many sources like some of the other chapters. So yeah, I see your point there.
Right. I mean, he's head of the Jaehaerys fan club. I mean, he's like a chapter member, lifetime chapter member. He's got his Jaehaerys ears. You know.
Well,
Um,
any king would be a great king after Aenys and Maegor, honestly.
oh,
But
agreed.
that
But
king's gonna be that's we'll talk about that in a minute. But go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just saying one has to take into question: is he being cast, and especially is his consort, Tayana, being cast in the worst light possible? Especially because if she had anything to do with magic, we know how the Grey Rats feel about that.
Very true. Very true. And during this whole time too, you gotta think Aegon and Rhaena had the twins, Arya and Rhaella, which we'll get into later because there's a damn twin swap that happens at the Citadel. And it's for political purpose. It makes perfect sense why they did it.
The Parent Trap.
It really is, and it was done on purpose. But to my point, Rihanna seems like an awesome mom, right? She does everything to protect her children and the people that helped her. Uh, even when she was called to marry uh, Maegor, she was waiting on Maegor. She was waiting on him to come to was it Fair Isle? She was at Fair Isle, correct? Waiting on him to come to Fair Isle. By the time he got there, she gave up. She knew to come, and she had already sent her children off, dyed their hair, classic, changed both their names, and sent them somewhere where she, even under torture, she wouldn't know. And then even, I don't think she would have married Maegor because when Maegor asked her to marry him, basically, or told her, um, Tiana brings in the twins and says, "You didn't think you could hide them from me, did you?" And right there, that kind of might. I mean, she still is ruthless. She might not be as awful as you think he is, but I'm pretty sure that happened. Uh, how did she find those kids? Well, she's the mistress of whispers, and she's a definite Varys sense, in my opinion. And to your point, John, Varys gets a lot of slack for being an awful person when most of the times he really isn't. He's thinking more about the picture as a whole than of himself. Now, Tiana, you could argue, was thinking more selfishly and wanted Maegor to herself. That's how I feel. I feel like she was trying to impress Maegor the whole time. Uh, and she was just blindly in love with Maegor. That's what I get from this. Y'all's thoughts?
Yeah, the fact of having a mother almost like the fact that she almost resigned herself to the fact that she would be marrying Maegor and that she had to protect her children in some sort of fashion, like you said, like dyeing their hair and not knowing where they were being sent is a thing that I can imagine that most mothers would do just because of she knows how cruel her technically her uncle is and his men could be. So for the fact that she did that sent them away, changed their identity pretty much to do that is kind of like a smart move, but now we don't at this point in the book, if we read it chapter by chapter, we don't know exactly where they went, really, and who they because there's that missing piece in there. But
That's a good point.
because there was that suspicion later on in the book of that there was it dragon eggs in there's obviously dragon eggs in Essos, but there is that whole thing of like where it would potentially be. So like even though it's of course changing their identity, they could always have one in like a bag or something until they're like waiting for them to um hatch or become hatchlings. So it could be like that sort of thing because we're trying to date how old Danish dragons are eggs could be. So if there was that as the potential of being scurried away, who knows?
Dreamfire did have 2 clutches of eggs, and it did not, like you said, did not state anywhere where they were laid, did it? What was done with the eggs? I know probably Dreamfire was on Dragonstone for a while, so I'd assume one of those clutches was laid there, but yeah, there are dragon eggs every damn where, period.
And for the show to only use Danny's eggs, I feel like there could be a thing in the end where they show another, like at least another spot where there could be ones.
John's gonna come back as a dragon egg in the book.
Yeah, he'll be reborn. But like that's when he's revealed as Aegon Targaryen or whatever his Targaryen name is. He's hatched out of a Targaryen. But now it begs the question: what's his color on the outside of his head?
That's a good point,
His
John.
color is black. His color is black. It's black because he's so heartbroken and wounded.
Yeah, Cardinal Doomsday asked me if the daunting task for all this Targ history. I was like, yeah, all these damn names, man. There's a million names in my head, and that's what I'm trying to get a hold of. I could get a hold of it if the names were easier to remember. They're all so close together. Still fun though. Makes you have to, I don't know, study more.
They're all so close together, and they all named their children after a predecessor. So it's like, which number of is this in the line? But go ahead, Jim.
Well, we're gonna have to not skip over. Well, yeah. We'll get into more stuff for the character breakdown. But I guess we'll talk about the end of days for Maegor. His last little bit, his desperation, taking the black brides. This guy is just, this time he marries three at once. Rhaenys, what was it? Rhaenys, Jean Westerling, and Costain. Dang it, what's her name? Eleanor Costain. See? Damn names. Eleanor's the only one to survive this man. And, did she kill him as well? And like we said, under torture, Tyanna confessed to doing something to Maegor's brides. And also, who was it Jean Westerling talked about that she was given tea? Some type of fertility tea from Tyanna. So that's kind of evidence she did mess with it, but I don't think she was the full reason. I think she may have thought she was, but I think it was more going into the line of her being a jilted lover. To this point, when Maegor finds out about this, he literally cuts her heart out with Blackfire and feeds it. Does he feed it to a dog? What is it? It just cuts her heart out with Blackfire, right? If I'm not mistaken. And
I believe you're right. I at least don't have any notes about dog feeding.
And before that, who is it? Alice. Oh my gosh, is it Hightower? No, it's Haraway. No, was it? No, it's Alice Haraway, right? That was her father had like 20 men come and try to impregnate her because just for fear of not wanting to get killed by Maegor for not bearing a son.
Right.
But this come to light by Tyanna, right? She found this out because she's the mistress of whispers. And all but two of the people confessed under torture. That's a pretty good ratio. Plus 12 more were stated. It seems a little overzealous, right?
The one had 12 sons.
No, there was 12. There were out of the 20 that were questioned, they got 12 more conspirators as well.
Under torture, all but two confessed. One, a father of 12, still had the gold paid to him by Lord Haraway for his services. Questioning was carried out swiftly and secretly, so Lord Haraway and Queen Alice had no inkling of the king's suspicions until the king's guard burst in on them. Dragged from her bed, Queen Alice saw her sisters killed before her eyes as they tried to protect her. Her father, inspecting the Tower of the Hand, was flung from the roof to smash upon the stones below. Haraway's sons, brothers, and nephews were taken as well, thrown on the spikes that lined the dry moat around Maegor's holdfast. Some took hours to die. The simple-minded Horace Haraway lingered for days. The 20 names on Queen Tyanna's list soon joined them. Oh, you're right. And then another dozen men named by the first 20. Correct. I apologize. I had it open to that page. Sorry, John.
Well, I didn't know that about the 12 sons. Now he uses 12 a lot. Damn, too many numbers. That's
12, 20,
uh,
3,
7.
6.
To
7.
that, was it not Alice Holloway who was she cut into 7 pieces, right? Didn't
Yes.
that you just said that, and then
7
I mean,
pieces.
yeah, you didn't want to do this man wrong, and
No.
then by the end, he was just I don't know if he was pitiful. Do you want to talk about Maegor's end? I think he pretty much knew at this point once with the rise of Jaehaerys, Storm's End going against him, Castle Rock going against him, Tyrell's going against him, all declaring for Jaehaerys and Alysanne, being led by Robar Baratheon and Queen Alyssa. Do you think Maegor killed himself? Do you think he was killed? Or do you think the only surviving wife was the person that killed him? What the hell happened to Maegor the Cruel? Does it matter? Anybody?
Probably it does matter in a sense. If my history, if my memory of history is correct, like I think that's another Henry VIII connection is that he did have one wife that did survive him, whether or not. Well, obviously we know that he wasn't killed by her, just by illness of his actions beforehand. But it's the thing of if she was the one to kill him, hats off to her as the one to be the one to kill him. It could be a thing because that kind of death is kind of, I wouldn't say it's hard to do by yourself, but to probably it was like maybe suicide homicide kind of like a mixture of the two in a sense, because there was the thing of how there was like a sword or a knife, but like coming from like the back of his neck under his chin, right?
And his
So
wrists were slit all the way up on both arms. Yeah.
it's like you can conceivably you can probably do one yourself, but with as much blood that comes out, probably you wouldn't be able to do the second one and your neck at the same time. So
More than likely, maybe the Kingsguard had something to do with it. But we have to, John, could you think of anybody else that would know the secret passages? I know Maegor killed all the Masons, but that's something we didn't even get into. He killed all the damn Masons. Maegor also was the one to don the dragon pit, so you can blame him for the start of the fall of the dragons if you want to. Go ahead, John. I'm sorry. I'm getting loopy
No,
here.
I can't think of anybody else who would have done it. Yeah, probably her. I mean, that's the only thing. If the picture in the book is any representation, I could see how possibly it was done by himself because his wrists aren't slit, they're impaled. Sorry. There we go. Like, they're impaled. His wrists and his throat are impaled.
Yeah, that's not how it's described in the book, which is
Maybe
weird.
he was like, right, exactly. Which goes back to the unreliable narrator.
Because if he did slit his wrist and he passed out, he would impale himself on the throne. If anybody's read the book, the throne fucking will stab the living dog crap out of you in any way possible. You're not supposed to be able to hardly sit on it. It was designed that way. Aegon, you're not supposed to sit comfortable on that throne. Shouldn't be comfortable while ruling a kingdom. Made for a lot of hemorrhoids, I'm sure. But, this. The Iron Throne was the death of Maegor, and I think it was very poetic. He sowed his own seeds just like his brother Aenys, but they did it in complete opposite ways. One was too kind and gentle, the other too cruel.
Aenys
And
still sowed plenty of seeds.
oh
I mean,
yes,
Aenys was like There's no questioning that. Like he was taking some fertility drugs or something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
He's
yeah,
like,
it's
baby,
so weird how
baby,
two
baby,
brothers.
baby.
But yeah,
I
that's
mean,
all they
because
do is put out babies.
yeah,
Yeah.
because of my genealogy, I'm allowed to use this term. Aenys had like a few Irish twins, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
But
but only yeah. But for Jaehaerys, like we go obviously because Jaehaerys is the only surviving him and Alicent are the only ones that survived. They too had a lot of uh, children, but only like 3 that survive into adulthood. Um,
Hmm.
right? They had
True.
like 11 children or something together.
Yeah, very true. Very true. But
no, that
we'll
sounds right.
we'll get into that one next stream. For
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, so many kids. What's up, PMDB Live and Lady Dreamfire? How are you? Happy New Year to everyone who is just joining us.
Oh, Johnny froze up.
Oh no! But
Oh,
joining us.
fucking dropped. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think I shouted out Lady Dreamfire and PMDB Live, but I might have dropped right there.
No, you
Oh,
got that, and then you dropped. You said their usernames, and then you dropped.
so after 606 years and 66 days of demon reign, Maegor is dead, and not Aegon, Jaehaerys, with the help of Rhaegar Baratheon, and everyone else, they fly straight. Do they not fly straight to King's Landing to claim the throne, if I'm not mistaken?
I think so. Yeah.
Right. They fly straight there. And we see the start of the rise of this young boy king. Uh, Alyssa apparently went to Pentos with Jaehaerys and Alysanne. That's where they fled to. Up until this point in the book, you don't really get much background. They just fled. No one knows where they are. They took the dragons and they're gone. So they show back up,
Screw you guys.
and
I'm taking my dragons and going home.
Yeah.
John, could you give me some sort of insight to where Jaehaerys could have become so learned in Pentost? Like, it seems like he learned so much there. He was a badass fighter. He knew all the literature. He knew everything about politics by the time he was 14 and back in King's Landing. Or at least that's what we're led to believe.
Well, there's a lot of a lot of Pentos was settled by people from Old Valyria, so I think that is probably where he got both his knowledge and his training from. I mean, it's never explicitly said, but that was always the pickup that I took. You know, it's kind of like uh, opportunities that can be given to somebody. You know, obviously in the Song of Ice and Fire books, like uh, Arya Stark, for example, like her father finds her the best swordsman. You know, he used to be the Sword of Bravos. Like I think there's always this concept maybe that any it almost reminds me of the rest of Europe during the reign of Byzantium. Like, you know, the rest of Europe hated Byzantium, but they were like, oh yeah, well that's where all the smart people are. That they're the, you know, they even admitted, you know, that's the true foundation of the Roman Empire. It's not what we've got going on here in the Holy Roman Empire, which, by the way, amazing quote, wasn't holy, wasn't Roman, and wasn't an empire. But you know, I think that in Pentos, he would have had proper tutors. He would have had proper weapons masters to train him. You know, and he would have been just taught properly. You learn it in a way that, you know, these Westerosi savages would not be. And I think that's what made him a good ruler. Also, you have to talk about. I mean, it's. I brought it up earlier. It's the elephant in the room. Master Gildian is like the biggest Jaehaerys fanboy, and so I think that some things are maybe a little overdrawn, a little overdone, so to speak.
I think some things could be embellished, and maybe he gets more credit than he deserves. But it seems that everyone he talked to respected and admired him. He reminds me of a lot of how everyone describes Aegon, and he instantly deals with Maegor's supporters in a way that is wise beyond his years. Now, yes, Rhaegar Baratheon came up with the main idea for what to do, but no one else on the council was going to go for that until Jaehaerys looked down from his throne in your fanboy fashion and declared that he will not make the mistakes of his father. And his mother agreed, and I think this really shows true leadership, whether it was him or really Rhaegar Baratheon that dealt with it. This really solidified Jaehaerys in the beginning because he showed a firm hand, but also didn't take your lands and your titles away, didn't punish you for fighting for the wrong side. He saw things for what they were, and in the free cities, you see a lot more of that, I would say, and it gives you more of a perspective because there's a lot of warring factions going on over there. It's pretty commonplace, especially outside the free cities. It, they're
Well,
always
no,
fighting.
he went back to what Grandpa did. Velvet glove with an iron fist.
Well, he
You
does,
know,
but
for the past generation, you had one or the other, and now what Jaehaerys did, at least from the perspective of the narrator, is go back to being just as good, if not better than Aegon, at being able to do both.
yeah, well, he did make one mistake we'll talk about later, but I don't want to get too far ahead. I got some specific things from this chapter that are awesome. I think we want to talk about. Anyways, uh, well, your first, Kenzie, you got any thoughts on kind of your first impressions of Jaehaerys, and then we'll get into kind of the stuff he had to deal with before he became king.
Well, we're kind of introduced to him, and he's seen as like this. Well, because he's like seen as like obviously he's the second he's like the second or third son at this point, after Aegon. So obviously he's not thinking that he's going to rule. He's very sensitive. He doesn't have his own dragon at this point, but his sister Alysanne has Silverwing. So how the two of them had a really close bond as children.
Jaehaerys has Vermithor, doesn't he?
No, it does not for a while. Like
Oh,
for
not
one,
yet. Okay, got you.
a
Sorry.
while when he's a kid, he doesn't have him.
Oh, can I say give a shout out to Sakuna Swana channel? I think I'm saying that right. And Claire Gray, how are you doing tonight? And go ahead, Kenzie.
Yeah. So he's like one of the ones that wasn't supposed to rule, but he ends up doing that. And there's a lot of the protectiveness that they have over him and Alysanne together. Like when Aegon, no, is it Aegon? No, when Aenys and all of the older children and them go on like that royal, almost like the royal tour. They kind of leave the two of them by themselves. So they're almost always put together, him and Alysanne. They're almost always put together, or they're almost talked about at the same point, which kind of when we bring credence to them together as that romantic relationship, it's actually kind of sweet that they almost are like that together. And he kind of proves himself, like Cardinal Doomsday says, as he's like an earnest young man, that he isn't obviously like his uncle, or he's more leaning towards like his father in a sense of like how he does things and how he's more like diplomatic, because as we find out later on in the books, that he's one of the most beloved of the early kings in Westeros. And I feel like he's one of probably the best that they've had in the beginning, anyways. So, yeah.
And yeah, if not mistaken, he had came back with Dark Sister, if I'm not mistaken. They took it from the wall of the Dragonstone, and he was like in the beginning before he became king. Many people were worried, and to your point about them almost uh, them being groomed would be a bad word, but they were stuck at each other's hip. And it's interesting that Rhianna wanted nothing to do with it. She had a claim to the throne, a stronger claim. Rhea and Rhaella, Rhea, I think, had the stronger claim to the throne. And she just gave it up and conceded without any hesitation and retreated to Dragonstone to live out her days. And I think that's pretty telling as well. Now, we don't, you know, this, like John said, this is written by a maester. This could have been forced, and we just don't even know it. But it seems as if that's kind of who they wanted to be king. But I, I'm trying not to get too deep into it because it's chapters later. So, John, you want to talk about the cock of the moon, man? Septon Moon and his siege of Old Town, and what Jaehaerys had to or had not, didn't have to do to become king. The siege of Old Town is hilarious, in my opinion.
Oh,
Septon Moon was a sinner, right? Gluttonous sinner that slept with everyone every night, slept with a different woman every night. People's daughters started bringing them to him. He was just this religious zealot that would preach and talk about how much he was a sinner. He would speak all day, and then at the end, he would have a different woman. There were cock of the moon shields. There were I think there was a cock of the moon brothel at one point, and he just become known for that. And they were all rallying behind him, including the Oakharts and the oh my gosh, it's not the Stokewars. Oh my gosh. Anyways, two major houses
so many
were
names.
with them,
So many
and
names.
I just want to go ahead and kind of say what happened. Well, first off, I kind of ask you your thoughts on Septon Moon and whether you think a faceless man killed him. Hold on. And then how about the usage of, even after death, Septon Moon was recycled. I thought that was priceless. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think Moon's first name had to be Jim, because there's a song by who is it? I think it's the Mumblety Pegs. Never take religion from a man named Jim, because it's talking about Jim Baker and Jim Jones, and like do as I say, not as I do. Oh, I'm a sinner. Oh Lord, forgive me tomorrow for the things I've done today. I think the portrayal of his dogma is absolutely hilarious. Like I remember laughing out loud while I was reading through those pages, because you think about these zealots who try and excuse their sins by saying, "Oh, I did this, but now I'm repenting." Like it's
No, I love it. Freaking. So he gets killed by the serving girl, right? And
right.
Kenzie, do you think she was a faceless man hired by the High Towers, possibly?
It's a possibility. Um, like anything is a, and the faceless men do like to use serving girls or serving people, I should say, um, to hide an identity because no one would ask her name, anything like Arya does, kind of with Walder Frey. She uses the serving girl's identity to shield herself. Um, it'd be cool. But do we know exactly when the Faceless Men? It's slipping my mind, but when the Faceless Men organized as an organization kind of thing started.
They've started with the founding of Bravos, and I don't remember what year that would be, but they did start with the founding of Bravos. I'd like to throw out there that your septon that wrote this, John, says it can't be the Faceless Men because the Faceless Men only make it like natural deaths. And true and untrue, the way this was done, in my opinion, was Faceless Man style all the way. Looked like a panicked girl that wanted to kill a would-be raper or someone in there, like someone wanted him dead. A
And then she
father,
disappears into the
someone.
night, doesn't she?
Yeah, they searched the whole camp and couldn't find anyone. No one can remember what she looked like, and the wine that was left there was poisoned and killed 4 of the guards the next day that drank it. So it was strategically thought out. It may not have been the Faceless Man. It could have just been a pissed off father at this point. But it comes to question, she brought the wine in, and his throat was slit. Yeah, it seems like some Faceless Man stuff to me. But could have been just someone coming from the back while they were in there having a time. But also the wine was poisoned. So she could have died afterwards. I don't know.
I agree. For me, I just thought that was a given. Like, I didn't even have to think about it. I don't even think it's a theory.
Yeah, they try to dismiss it in the book, but yeah.
Anything that the Grey Rats dismiss, I think, is probably fact.
That's a good rule to live by.
That's usually my opinion. It is probably the real fact, as opposed to what yeah. Anything the Grey Rats dismiss, I think is probably a fact because it's almost like, at least for me, like anytime when reading the books, particularly, a maester says something, like I take it with a block of salt, not a grain. Like there's probably some bullshit going on there because they have their agenda. They're the freaking Illuminati. I mean,
they are mysterious, and I love digging into them. And I'm sure we'll do another Faceless Man stream because I'm coming across more stuff here and there. So I don't know. It seems like Jaehaerys is too perfect to your point, John. The Red Dog of the Hills bent the knee and shed a tear to Jaehaerys at Old Town when he come with the King's decree from Riverrun. Like with the tear. So it's a good point you make. I still think Jaehaerys was a good king, and I think he's so lifted up to the point I made earlier that after 2 awful, awful is, I need to think of a worse term, a better term to use for awful. But awful kings, a decent king is going to look like a savior. Yeah.
Contemptible.
And I would, Jaehaerys, I don't know. We'll talk about it later. But, so.
I was just giving you some thesaurus stuff there. Trying to help you out.
So Kenzie, when Rod the Starveling and Lorcus the Learned decided after Septimune was dead to place him on a horse and charge the walls of Old Town. What were your thoughts on that? Even after death, he will be our savior.
Hey, it's kind of not exactly, but it's kind of like what was with the High Septon in the show with was it the high like the sparrows, like when they like go into Baelish's establishment, take him and like pretty much drag him out in front of the townspeople and be like with the septas and be like, shame. Like it's different, but it's like that whole thing of like even shaming after death is just be like the setting of an example of like this is who your High Septon was, and now even after death he gets to be continually humiliated, and to not have that, I guess, perfect essence of such, to then once he does die, like with the whole what is like the wording, like the gods, like to be with like the gods again and all of that stuff. Like it's not to like show almost his crimes and his past sins and stuff. So he's not entirely pure, like that kind of like, you know what I'm trying to say. But
Yeah, it's terribly ironic that his followers defile his body in the name of his own cause, right? Like they defile his body in ways that aren't supposed to be defiled by the 7 pointing star. But as we know, I don't even think Septon Moon could read. And most of the poor fellows probably couldn't read. Most people can't read that are in Westeros or anywhere. If you're not privy to it, you're not going to read. If you don't have a maester, you're not going to learn how to
A
read
lot
for
of
the most
lords
part.
can't read. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's the power of the gray rats. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of lords can't read. You know, they dictate their raven messages to maesters. The illiteracy level. I would think the literacy percentage in Westeros is probably about 20, maybe
Yeah.
25. I think over in the free cities, it's probably about around 60. I think with the Dothraki, it's like 2. But you know, yeah, I mean, there's the reason that the maesters have the type of power they do is because they can read and they can write and they communicate. And I might dictate you this letter, but that's not necessarily what you're going to write down, especially if I can't read it before you send it out. You know, there's that whole scene in I think it's the Clash of Kings when Arya shows the letter to the guard and says what it says, but it's not what it says. He's just like, okay, go on. You know, I think that's a really good representation of that.
yeah, that scene was in a couple episodes ago when we talked about it.
Armory Lorch. He couldn't read though, so I don't know how he figured it out.
Like looked at it and was like, oh yeah, that's what it says.
So we're gonna end with the big juice, right? In this, we get the coronation of Jaehaerys, but at the same time, Rhaella and Arya are there together. Now, Arya Targaryen is heir to the throne until Jaehaerys has a child. We must remember this. So, we have Arya Targaryen, who is completely shy, hated animals, and was just very reclusive. We had Rhaella, who was basically a hellion, and was the sisters were complete opposite. By the time when Arya got back to King's Landing after the coronation of Jaehaerys, people started to notice that she changed completely. She started riding horses, going. I don't know if she was riding horses. She started playing with animals. She started getting all kinds of friends. Just acting completely out of character. Do you think Rayanna or even Alyssa changed uh, the sisters based off just in case Jaehaerys died and they needed the better one to succeed to the throne? Because it was made to the point they could not tell them apart at all except for their personalities. John?
Haley Mills and Haley Mills in The Parent Trap. I mean, yeah, it obviously they were switched out. I mean, there's no question about that. But who would be better for it? And also who would actually want it? I mean, I often speak that the problem in a representative government is that the people who are in power want to be in power, but you have to at least have a modicum of that. And if you're somebody who's like, no, 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 I want to sit and be quiet and hide, like it's not going to work. And you know, yeah, I think that the decision was made for the betterment of the realm. Now, who made that decision? That's a little up in the air. But I do think the decision was made for the betterment of the realm.
Okay, we'll talk about this later, but I feel like it was like Rogar Baratheon had something to do. But you kind of see this play out later, and that's why everybody's doing reread with us, or if you're not, even if you have read it, we'll be trying to do this every week. Don't know how long's the next couple chapters, John? Kenzie, go ahead and give your thoughts on the twins and what significance, if any, but that it bears in the future that you think, and any other thing that you saw in this chapter that you thought was cool, if possible.
With the twins and that whole thing, Jordan Jedi says splitting heirs.
Yeah.
If there's the potential that they stay the same, like it's the same exact ones, it's just because of the situation and because they grew up. Aria was able to Aria, however you pronounce it, was able to like adapt and grow up and kind of come into her own, which is entirely possible because it happens to kids all the time. They start off as really shy and are kind of like her, or they have some aspect like her, but then as they grow older and they go to school, like we're talking about like this time, but like when they go to school and they start to be less and less out of the home or less and less of their normal situation, they adapt and they grow. So it's very likely that it's the same too. And that you just grew up and adapted. But if it was to be a swap, I wouldn't be surprised either because they talk about that a lot.
Well, instantly, once they left, Rayella, who was at Old Town, never got in trouble again. Like, she was always getting in trouble up to that point, and then all of a sudden never got in trouble again. Thought that, I don't know, it's pretty telling. It's a good point.
Yeah, it's just the ability, because once you're sort of, I guess, brought out of an element that you've always known, you can change and adapt. So it's not like the oddest thing to happen, but I do feel like if they did happen to switch them, they did it at a time and an age where it made the most sense to switch them, because obviously they've been put in a situation where to be switched is not it's not as hard to know the difference because they're going from like small children to like average age, like more less of less of a small child to like a older child. It's not like too hard to, because faces and stuff change all the time and attitudes change, so who knows. Kind of the interesting part of these two chapters that we kind of know about is obviously the whole dynamic and the continuation of this family. And this is where we also see different names we brought up, which is also kind of funny and cool. I know we kind of talked about it already, but it's the fact of the potion to conceive like the children that the Jane Westerling, I think, is the one that marries Maegor. Because there's that whole thing in the Song of Ice and Fire books about her and having the child that supposedly is Rob's, but it was because of her mother's setup. So that could have been used again. We just don't know it to the fullest extent in the main story.
Oh, I forgot about that in the books. Yeah.
Because it's the thing of to secure the king of the North's heir. To use that.
Oh.
But Claire Gray makes that a nice point too about the twins and says, or she was just more confident away from the abuse of her crazy sister. Very true.
Yeah, it's possible. But if not mistaken, Rihanna had already been at Old Town for a couple of years, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I think
That wasn't when she went to Old Town. She was already there.
Yeah, I think it was about 2 years.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, it could be that way. We'll have to see during the reread. I lean toward there being a baby swap, but during the second read, I'll look more into it because it seems, if what happens to Rayella at Old Town may have way more significance now if that's really Arya, and that's, possible heir to the throne. We'll have to see how that goes down later. John, is there anything you would like to bring up from these two chapters before we make like a tree and leave?
I love that these two chapters give you so much more depth about the Targaryen family. Like that's what I really like. I think honestly, even with the like 90 some odd names that are dropped in these two chapters, like it
That's
really,
lowballing it.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. It really it gives more depth to the family. Like it, because it always seems like, you have the Reign of Aegon, and then you have the Dance of Dragons. Coming from A Song of Ice and Fire. And everything in between is just kind of like, like it's an adult talking on peanuts.
Well, I mean, history tends to focus on the highlights, right? Wouldn't you say?
Right. Right. But I think it gives more depth to it. And I think I really enjoyed it, and I do like that it's written from a biased perspective. As someone who's as into literature as I am, I like that George R. R. Martin can consistently keep that biased perspective. I really like that a lot, and I think these two chapters probably portray that just as well, if not even better, than the next two, which are all about how Jaehaerys was anointed by God, and he's, the strongest, greatest, smartest, best, most potent, wonderful ruler ever who has existed. Like, I think these two chapters, I like how they're written with that perspective. And
I accidentally muted John for a second. Is that any better, everyone? I turned him up as loud as I could.
did you mute me? Sorry.
No, I was turning you up because I said you were low. Hold on. I forgot you had come back on. I had him turned up. See if that works better. Finish your. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just the POV of these two chapters, I think are just really well done. I love the consistency of it. I really like it, and I think these might be my two favorite chapters. If you combine the two, not my favorite things happen, but in the quality of writing or in the style of writing, I think that one person perspective being that person being Master Gillian, but I think it's really well written, and
it's super clever, right? Because I guess in a sense it's hard, but it frees George up to play with things more to where he can manipulate the story more when need be, because things aren't set in stone so much. Yes, you do have this canon, but it's limited canon compared to other works. You don't have this certainty about what's going to happen. It's very hard to predict. There is foreshadowing throughout the books that are pretty evident, but then there's very, very subtle hints back and forth and wording here and there that you have to look for, or you're not even going to be able to tell what's going to happen until it hits you in the face. And yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I really enjoyed these two chapters. I couldn't put it down. I kept trying to put it down, but I couldn't. And I don't know. It needs to. Need to take like 6 hours and talk about 3 pages or something, but I'm not. I want to say that, yeah, it was awesome. I think we learned a lot, and we're going to talk a lot more about Jaehaerys, Alysanne, Rhaegar Baratheon, Alicent, no, not Alicent. Good gosh, Alyssa. And the next episode we'll be doing next 2 chapters. You think we can handle
that's
that?
the next two. That's about 50 pages.
So the year of the 3 brides and a surfeit of rulers. So it'll be all about basically Jaehaerys and a bunch of backstory. I think we'll get the golden wedding next episode. Not next episode. Yeah, next episode on my channel. We'll be able to talk about the golden wedding, if I'm not mistaken, which is a pretty magnificent affair. Real quick, if y'all want to go ahead, let Mackenzie go first. And you can give shout outs and then plug your channel if you want.
All right. So we have in the chat, there was a lot of people who joined us today. We have Reese O, The Dog Show, Cardinal Doomsday, Jordy Jedi, Pandora Stargarian, Christy of Oldstone, Claire Gray. Man, a lot of people show up. Someone named John St. Baptiste. I don't know who he is. Another person named John would be crazy. Who is this person? Lady Laura Dane, also known as Lady Dreamfire. And
Claire Gray, I think you got him.
One of my 2 of my fellow Cylon Jails, Clarissa Thompson and Bobby Catalano were here. Sakura-san channel was here.
Septuagint Secrets and PMDB Live. Al Red Sox fan. I don't know if you got him yet. There's a lot of people. Did you get Jordy?
Yeah, but you can say. I think I did. But Jordan did.
Dog Show.
Jordy Jedi.
Dog Show.
L Views and Histories UK. And of course, Pandora Stargarian. I just like saying that name. It's a crazy name. It's awesome.
Can't get to the top.
Bobby Catalano. I just had to say hi to Bobby again. She's still hanging in there with us. Go ahead, plug your stuff, Mackenzie. I'm sorry, I'm rambling. The sickness
Lauren's
got me.
Corner, stop by for a second.
Lauren's Corner was here in the very beginning. You can find me with Johnny tomorrow on, even though he'll probably talk about it, with him and tomorrow at around 2 with a special guest talking about Vikings and season 5, episode 16, The Buddha. And then tomorrow night, again, I will be joined by these two gentlemen, and they will be joined by me on the Silent Johns, talking the season 1 finale, Cobal's Last Claiming Part 2, on my channel this week. Hopefully by Sunday, ? I should have my Stranger Things episode 1 reaction finished. It's like halfway through editing. Just trying to pick the best parts. And next week on Wednesday, episode club, we have Blackwater, and it's the big episode of season 2. Really excited to talk about it. We're almost through season 2, and after Blackwater, I didn't mention this yesterday, but after Blackwater, we're going to going at least 2 times a week. And some weeks we'll have to do 2 episodes at a time to at least be somewhat caught up before April starts. But yes, well, a lot of streams coming, and also Stranger Things on Johnny's channel as well. So go ahead.
We're doing loads of stuff. We're gonna do a rapid fire episode club coming up soon, like she said. But yeah, tomorrow, Vikings at 2 p.m. Fiora Hexa will be on with us, and I probably butchered the name, but I try to say it like a country weirdo. John, plug your crap. No, John has an awesome channel, man, dude. Plug your stuff, man. The music man himself. Throw it out there.
Thank you, Johnny. Yeah, music makes people come together. Yesterday, Midweek Music Ear Candy, which is always subscriber based, came up, and it was. I didn't see her here today, but part of our whole community, Sasuke, actually sent the song to me, and it's fracking awesome. The teaser for this week's playlist is coming out tonight. It will be dropped at 8 o'clock Eastern, and this is a good one. I'm pretty stoked about it. But yeah, check it out. Check it out. If you like music, please do so and share it with other people too. And I agree with Cardinal Doomsday. Yes, Johnny is a country weirdo, but he's my best friend in the world, and I love him.
Yeah, I called myself that, so it's no insult. I know it in the bottom of my heart, and I thank y'all for coming on the panel with me. And this has been an awesome discussion. Thank you everyone in the chat. Much love, my fam. I hope to see y'all soon, and I'll make this short and sweet because I'm horrible at goodbyes. So, peace, love, and chicken grease, my friends. Talk to y'all soon. John Baptiste, go ahead and kiss him. Go ahead. Yeah, there's a lawsuit coming for that one. Just kidding. Love you guys.